I live on the second floor of a small apartment complex. For months, my life was painfully routine. Work, home, dinner, bed. Nothing strange, nothing exciting. But about 2 months ago, I started waking up at 3:14 a.m. every single night. Not 3:15, not 3:13, always 3:14. At first, I brushed it off as random insomnia, but then I noticed something that made my skin crawl. Each time I woke up, the curtains over my bedroom window would be slightly open, just enough for someone to see in. I never left them like that. One night, I decided to stay awake past midnight and watch some YouTube videos in bed. Sometime around 3 a.m., I heard this faint tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. It was coming from my window. When I turned my head, I nearly screamed. There was a shadow, a tall, still silhouette, framed perfectly in the narrow gap of my curtains. I didn't move. My phone was just inches away, but I was terrified that if I reached for it, whoever was out there would know I was awake. The shadow didn't move, not for 30 seconds, not for a full minute. Then, it just slowly backed away into the darkness. That's when I knew. This wasn't just some random creep walking by. Whoever this was, they were coming here for me. After that night, I started keeping the curtains fully shut and even put a chair against the window for extra security. But that didn't stop the feeling, that pressure, of being watched. 2 nights later, I was half asleep when I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. This time, I leapt out of bed, ripped open the curtains, and looked out. Nothing. No shadow, no person. Just the dim glow of the parking lot lights and the faint hum of a street lamp buzzing. I told myself it had to be a branch or something, but there aren't any trees near my window. The next day at work, I was exhausted from barely sleeping. During lunch, I mentioned it to my coworker, Maria. Her face went pale. She told me about a man who'd been reported hanging around the neighborhood, always wearing a dark hoodie, always seen near windows. The police hadn't been able to find him. That night, I went to bed early. I made sure the curtains were shut tight, locked my bedroom door, and left my phone right next to me. I must have drifted off around midnight, but at 3:14 a.m., like clockwork, tap, tap, tap. This time, I didn't move immediately. I kept my breathing slow, pretending to be asleep. The sound stopped, but then I heard something worse. The faint squeak of my window frame. It wasn't just tapping anymore. Someone was trying to open it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he'd hear it. The squeak of the window frame got louder, followed by the slow scrape of metal against metal. I grabbed my phone, silently unlocking it, and pulled up the keypad to dial 911. But before I could press call, I froze. A whisper. So soft I almost thought I imagined it. "I can see you." Every muscle in my body locked up. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The sound of the window frame stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then came a deep, heavy inhale, right on the other side of the glass. I slowly reached for the lamp next to my bed, ready to flick it on. My hand was shaking so hard I almost knocked it over. But just as my fingers touched the switch, there was a sudden sharp bang against the window, like someone had slammed their full weight into it. I screamed, turned on the light, and ran out of the room. I didn't stop until I was in my bathroom with the door locked, clutching my phone. When the police arrived, they checked the window. No fingerprints, no footprints. Nothing but a faint, greasy smudge on the glass, right at face level. They told me it was probably just a prank, and that I should keep my windows locked. But the thing is, my windows had been locked. That night I barely slept. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind against the siding made my stomach knot. By morning, I convinced myself it was over, that maybe the police were right, just a prank. But then, around noon, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a picture, taken from outside my bedroom window, from last night. I could see myself, in the dark, sitting frozen in my bed, clutching my phone. The caption said, "You should have kept the lights off." I deleted the text immediately and went straight to the police station. They traced the number, but it led nowhere. A burner phone. I installed cameras, moved my bed away from the window, and replaced all the locks. For months, nothing happened. I started to relax. Then, last week, I came home to find a single sticky note on my bedroom window. It said, "I still can." It was almost midnight when I left my friend's apartment. I don't own a car, so I ordered a rideshare like I've done dozens of times before. The app matched me with a driver named Tom, white sedan, license plate ending in 73K. Estimated arrival, 3 minutes. When the car pulled up, I immediately noticed something off. The license plate matched, but the backseat door handle was missing. The entire inside handle looked like it had been ripped out. I hesitated, but the driver leaned over, smiled, and said, "Don't worry, the door's broken from the inside. You'll have to open it from the outside when we get there." That should have been my cue to cancel and walk away, but it was late, cold, and I just wanted to get home. I got in. The car smelled faintly of gasoline and something metallic. The interior was spotless, except for the passenger seat, where a large black duffel bag sat, slightly unzipped. I could see the handle of a flashlight and what looked like duct tape. The moment we pulled away, I noticed something else. Instead of turning toward the main road, Tom took a side street, a dark, narrow lane with barely any streetlights. I think the GPS says the other way," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. Tom didn't answer at first. Then he chuckled under his breath. "Don't worry, I know a shortcut. Much faster." I forced a laugh, pretending to believe him, but my stomach tightened. As we drove, I realized there was no GPS running on his phone. The rideshare driver app usually has the route displayed, but his phone was dark, resting face down in the cup holder. The streets got quieter. We passed fewer and fewer houses. I glanced out the window. We were headed into an area I didn't recognize at all. I considered texting my friend, but when I reached for my phone, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. He was watching me, not the road, me. It wasn't a casual glance. His eyes were locked on mine, like he was trying to read my thoughts. Then he asked in this low, almost playful tone, "So, do you live alone?" I froze for a second, pretending I didn't hear him. But Tom repeated the question, this time slower, with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Do you live alone?" I lied instantly. "No, my brother's at home. He's probably waiting up for me." Tom's smile faded a little, but he didn't say anything. The car rolled deeper into unfamiliar streets. No houses now, just trees pressing close on either side. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to get out, but we were moving fast, and I had no idea where we were. I discreetly opened my phone's camera and started recording, just in case. Then, he made a sudden right turn onto what looked like a dirt road. The car's headlights lit up nothing but woods. I think you missed the turn," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Nope," he said, his voice almost cheerful. "This way's better. Fewer cops." The road got bumpier, branches scraping against the car. It felt like we were miles from anywhere. I gripped the door handle, my mind racing for a way out. That's when I noticed something on the passenger side floor. A heavy-duty rope and a pair of work gloves. My throat went dry. I couldn't take my eyes off that rope and those gloves. Every warning I'd ever heard about rideshare horror stories came flooding back all at once. I forced my voice to stay calm. "Hey, my brother just texted me. He's outside waiting. Can you drop me at the main road?" Tom didn't answer. He just kept driving, deeper into the woods. That's when my survival instinct kicked in. While he was focused on the road, I quietly slid my hand to the door lock, pushed it up, and waited for the right moment. The car slowed slightly as we hit a sharp bend. I yanked the handle, threw the door open, and jumped into the ditch. The ground tore at my knees and hands, but I scrambled into the trees before I could even feel the pain. Behind me, I heard his brakes screech, then the sound of a car door opening. "Hey!" he shouted into the darkness. I didn't stop. I ran until my lungs felt like they'd burst, weaving through the woods until I saw the glow of a streetlight in the distance. I burst out onto a main road, waving frantically at the first car I saw. It slowed down, and a woman rolled down her window, eyes wide. "Are you okay?" she asked. I told her to just drive. She dropped me at a gas station where I finally called the police. When I gave them Tom's name and plate number, the officer's expression darkened. He told me, "You're lucky. We've had other complaints about him, but nothing we could prove." I never used rideshare again. And sometimes when I'm walking alone at night, I swear I can still hear a man's voice just behind me whispering, "Do you live alone?" I used to work overnight security at a small community college in the Midwest. It wasn't exactly a thrilling job, just walking around the empty campus, checking locked doors, and making sure no one was trespassing. Most nights were painfully quiet. The vending machine room was one of those odd little places I always had to check. It was a small, narrow space tucked away in the basement of the library, with 3 humming vending machines lined against the wall and a couple of old tables and chairs for students to sit at. The lighting in there was terrible. 2 flickering fluorescent bulbs that made the place feel like something out of a horror movie. One night, at around 2:30 a.m., I went down there like usual. The building was locked, of course, so I had no reason to expect anyone. But as I reached the vending room, I noticed the faint sound of coins clinking. When I opened the door, I froze. There was a man standing at the farthest vending machine, his back to me. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie with the hood up. His hands were pressed against the glass, and he was completely still. "Sir? The building's closed," I said. No reaction, not even a flinch. I stepped closer, trying to figure out if he was a student who got locked in. That's when I realized something was off. He wasn't actually putting coins into the machine. His fingers were just resting on the buttons. And then very slowly, his head turned. Not his body, just his head, until I could see his face. The vending machine's dim light reflected off his eyes. They were wide, too wide, and his mouth was stretched into a smile that didn't look human. He whispered something I couldn't hear, and then, without warning, the vending machine light flickered, and he was gone. I swear to God, I didn't blink. He was just gone. After the man disappeared, I just stood there in the vending machine room, heart pounding so hard I could hear it. I kept telling myself there had to be some logical explanation. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe he ducked behind something and slipped away. But the room was tiny. There was nowhere to hide. I checked the hallway. Nothing. No sound, no footsteps. Just the low hum of the building's heating system. I went straight to the security office and pulled up the camera feed from the vending machine room. The footage showed exactly what I expected. Me walking in, stopping suddenly and staring at nothing. There was no man in the video. But here's the part that made my skin crawl. A few seconds before I walked in, the vending machine lights flickered. And for exactly 3 frames, less than a second, you could see a tall, dark figure standing there with its hands on the glass. No face. Just darkness where the face should have been. I replayed it over and over, hoping it was just some glitch in the feed, but the shape was too distinct. The way it leaned in towards the machine, it looked deliberate. I didn't know what to do. My shift still had 5 hours left, and the thought of walking past that vending machine room again made me sick to my stomach. That's when the phone on my desk rang. It was the internal campus line. When I picked it up, I didn't hear anyone speak at first, just a low, static hum. Then, slowly, a voice whispered, "Don't turn around." The whisper in the phone froze me. My chair was turned toward the monitors, my back facing the long, empty hallway. Every nerve in my body was screaming to look, but my mind kept replaying the voice. "Don't turn around." I stayed still for what felt like minutes, just listening. My breathing sounded too loud in my ears, and the soft hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to swell into an almost suffocating buzz. Finally, I forced myself to spin the chair around. The hallway was empty, or it should have been. Down at the far end, where the dim light from the vending machine room spilled into the hall, there was a shadow on the floor. Not a normal shadow. This one stretched impossibly long, as if whoever it belonged to was standing far closer to me than the shape suggested. And it was moving, slowly, in my direction. I slammed the office door shut and locked it, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. But when I turned back to the monitors, my stomach dropped. Every camera in the building, except for the one showing the hallway outside my door, was now black, just static. On the one working feed, I could see it clearly now. That tall, faceless figure from the vending machine. Its head tilted unnaturally as it stood just outside my office door. It didn't knock. It didn't move. It just waited. Then the phone rang again. I didn't want to answer it. Every instinct told me to let it ring. But the sound drilled into my head until my hand moved on its own. I lifted the receiver to my ear. Silence. Then, a whisper. "You shouldn't have looked." The line went dead. A second later, the office door handle began to rattle. Slow at first, then violently, like whoever was outside wanted to rip it off entirely. I grabbed the heavy flashlight from the desk, my heart pounding, and backed away. Then, nothing. The handle stilled, and on the monitor, the figure was gone. Every camera flickered back on, all feeds showing empty halls, empty rooms. It was as if nothing had happened. I sat there until sunrise, gripping the flashlight like a lifeline, telling myself it had been some kind of twisted prank. But when my replacement arrived, she gave me a strange look. "Hey, why'd you leave this in the lobby?" She held up the security phone, the one that had been on my desk all night, and taped to it was a small scrap of paper with 3 words written in jagged black ink. "See you soon." It was around 2 a.m. when Jake got home from his late shift at the hospital. He lived alone in a narrow apartment complex with long, dimly lit hallways, the kind where the overhead bulbs buzz faintly and the carpet is permanently stained with years of spills and footsteps. Jake had been there for almost a year, and nothing unusual had ever happened. But that night, he swore the hallway felt colder than usual when he stepped inside. As he turned to lock his door, he noticed something strange at the far end of the corridor. There was a man, tall, too tall, standing completely still. His head was tilted slightly, as if watching Jake. Jake blinked, thinking maybe it was just a tired trick of the eyes. But when his vision cleared, the man was still there. No movement, no sound, just standing in the dim light, half in shadow. Trying to shake the unease, Jake muttered to himself and went inside. But before he shut the door, he looked back one more time. The hallway was empty. Jake tried to tell himself it was nothing, maybe just a neighbor heading back to their apartment, maybe a trick of his overtired brain. He took a shower, ate something quick, and sat down on the couch to unwind before bed. But the thought of that man at the end of the hall kept creeping back into his mind. The height, the stillness, the way the dim light caught only part of his face. At around 3:30 a.m., Jake's phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number, no name, just 3 words. "I like watching." Jake stared at the screen, frozen. He didn't recognize the number, and he was sure he hadn't given his phone out to anyone new recently. He thought about calling the police, but what would he even say? That someone sent him a weird text? That he saw a tall guy in the hallway for a few seconds? Trying to shake it off, he turned off the lights and went to bed. But at exactly 4:02 a.m., a faint sound pulled him from half-sleep. It was the slow, deliberate creak of a floorboard from just outside his apartment door. Jake's heartbeat thudded in his ears as he lay completely still in the dark. He strained to listen, barely breathing. Another sound followed. A soft, slow shuffle, like someone dragging the heel of their shoe across the carpeted hallway. Then came it. 3 sharp knocks on his apartment door. Not loud, not rushed, almost polite. Jake didn't move. Whoever it was didn't knock again. Instead, there was the faint sound of breathing. right on the other side. His phone was on the nightstand. He reached for it as silently as possible, but the moment his fingers brushed it, the breathing stopped. Then, after several seconds of heavy silence, a whisper slid under the door. "You're awake." Jake's blood ran cold. He didn't wait another second. He dialed 911, his voice shaking as he explained that someone was outside his door. The dispatcher told him to stay put and that officers were already on their way. But before he could even hang up, a new sound filled the apartment. It was coming from inside the wall right next to his bed. A slow, deliberate scratching, moving toward him. The scratching grew louder, closer, like nails raking against drywall inches from Jake's head. His eyes darted toward the door, still shut, then to the window. The thought of jumping from the third floor seemed less terrifying than whatever was inside that wall. Then, silence. The quiet stretched on for what felt like an eternity, broken only when his phone buzzed in his trembling hand. It was the dispatcher. "Sir, the officers are outside your door. Can you open it?" Jake hesitated, his eyes locked on the doorknob. "Is one of them whispering?" he asked. The line went quiet for a moment. Then the dispatcher's tone sharpened. "No one's at your door yet. Stay in the room." Jake's stomach dropped. That's when the door handle slowly turned on its own. Not a rattle, not a bump. A slow, deliberate twist, followed by the sound of bare feet walking away down the hallway. When the police finally arrived minutes later, they found no one in the building. But inside Jake's apartment, they did find something. Behind the wall next to his bed was a narrow, dusty crawl space, and in the dust were fresh footprints. It was late November, the kind of night where the cold seeped into your bones and every street lamp seemed to flicker just a second too long. Mark, a delivery driver for a small-town restaurant, had just finished his last drop-off and was headed home along the old county highway. The road was nearly pitch black, with only his headlights cutting through the fog that clung to the ground like something alive. As he rounded a bend, his high beams caught a figure on the side of the road, a young woman in a pale dress, shivering, her hair damp as if she'd been caught in the rain. Mark slowed, thinking she must be freezing out there. When he rolled down his window, she stepped closer, her voice trembling as she asked if he could take her into town. He unlocked the door, and she climbed in without a word. The moment she sat down, Mark noticed her skin was cold. Not just from the weather, but unnervingly cold, like touching the side of a freezer. He tried to make small talk, but she only gave short, soft answers, her eyes fixed straight ahead on the road. As they approached a crossroads, she pointed toward a narrow lane and said quietly, "It's this way." Mark turned, but halfway down the road, something felt wrong. The air in the car grew heavy, and the faint smell of damp earth filled the cab. When he glanced at the passenger seat, she was gone. Mark slammed on the brakes, his heart hammering in his chest. The seatbelt locked across his chest, and his eyes darted around the dark, empty road. The passenger door was still shut. No sound, no movement, just the low hum of the engine and the soft hiss of the heater. He swore he'd just seen her sitting there. Trying to make sense of it, Mark drove forward slowly until the lane ended at a small cluster of houses. He noticed a porch light on and pulled into the driveway. An older man stepped outside, clutching a flashlight. Mark explained what had happened. The girl in the pale dress, asking for a ride, then vanishing before his eyes. The man's expression darkened. He nodded slowly and said, "You're not the first. That stretch of road, we've been seeing her for years." Mark's breath caught. The man pointed toward a small, weather-worn mailbox at the edge of the yard. "She lived here. Died 30 years ago in a car crash on that very bend. You picked her up right where it happened." Mark's stomach twisted. He didn't want to believe the man, but the details, the pale dress, the long black hair, matched perfectly. Trying to shake the unease, he asked, "What was her name?" The man's eyes glistened in the dim porch light. "Lily. She was just 19. Mark suddenly remembered something. When she first got in the car, he'd felt the seat dip, but no warmth. It had been cold, unnaturally cold. He shivered. The man stepped closer, lowering his voice. "They say if she touches you, it means she's coming back for you." Mark's skin prickled. He could still feel it, just before she vanished, her icy fingers brushing his arm. From the trees beyond the driveway, a soft voice drifted out. "Mark!" He froze. The man's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, but there was nothing there. Just the swaying of the branches and the sound of leaves skittering across the pavement. "Go home, son," the man whispered, "and pray she doesn't follow you." Mark drove home with the radio off, the world outside swallowed in shadows. Every bump in the road made him glance at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her pale face staring back. By the time he pulled into his driveway, the clock read 2:47 a.m. He grabbed his keys, telling himself it was just a creepy coincidence, nothing more. Inside, the silence felt heavy. The air was colder than it should have been. Mark locked the door, tossed his jacket on the couch, and headed to the kitchen for water. That's when he noticed it. On the counter. A small puddle. Not water from a glass, but droplets trailing from the floor to the hallway, like wet footprints. His chest tightened. Slowly, he turned his head toward the hallway. Standing there, barely visible in the dark, was the girl. Her hair hung in dripping strands. Her pale dress clung to her skin, and her lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You drove me home," she whispered. Mark's scream never made it past his lips.